Good morning. I'm going to be reading T.D. Jakes' Crushing. It's a new book by him that also has a workbook with it. And I'm going to read the book and we're going to go over the questions. Okay. Follow God's process for growth and learn how you can benefit from life's crushing experiences to turn pressure into power. In this insightful book, T.D. Jakes wrestles with age old questions. Do we have to suffer so much loss in this life in order to mature in our faith? Why would a good father allow his children to suffer so much pain, injustice, and heartache? In his most personal offering yet, Bishop Jakes emphasizes the value of asking these difficult questions and tells crushing stories from his own journey, the painful experiments of learning his young teenage daughter was pregnant, the agony of watching his mother succumb to Alzheimer's, and the shock and helplessness he felt when his own son had a heart attack. But he soon learned that God was using those challenging experiences to prepare him for unexpected blessings. As the master vintner, God knows your crops of fruit are merely part of an ongoing greater process to fulfill the destiny He has in store for you. Bishop Jakes wants to remind you that if you are faithful through suffering, you will be surprised by God's joy, comforted by His peace, and filled with His purpose. Crushing will inspire you to have hope even in your most difficult moments if you trust in God and lean on Him during setbacks. He will lead you through. Now, let's go to chapter 1. Again, the name of the book is Crushing. God Turns Pressure into Power by T.D. Jakes. The first chapter is called When Everything Falls Apart. Only through experiences of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved. This was said by Helen Keller. Daddy, I need to tell you something. No father wants to hear those words from his teenage daughter in the trembling voice with which my youngest daughter Sarah spoke them to me and her mother sitting there on our front porch. My wife Sarita and I locked eyes on our youngest child and held our breath in anticipation of the disclosure she was about to reveal. Time stood still as evening unfolded shadows. Hold up a minute. One of y'all come turn the light on for me. Because this one is not doing it. I can't see right. Okay, yeah, that's better. Time stood still as evening unfolded shadows across the shoulders of the Texas sky, and a high breeze wafted the scent of honeysuckle. I knew my daughter was about to reveal something of enormous magnitude. I'm pregnant. The tears she had been fighting to hold back burst the dam of emotion as our baby girl leaned in to wrap her arms around us. As her sobs subsided, Sarah proceeded to share with us the events surrounding her condition, a secret she had been hiding for several months. The strength in her soul exceeded her 13 years as she summoned every fiber in her being to reveal the fear, turmoil, and excitement coursing through her young heart. Stunned to say the least, I couldn't believe the courage it took for her to confide something so significant in us. As Sarah cried in my arms, I felt the full weight of the pain and anguish she carried for those several months before she finally unburdened herself. As a parent, you are called to carry the loads of your children that are too heavy for them, and you even want to carry the lighter ones to ease their interactions with the world and everything life will throw at them. My daughter's tears soaked through my shirt as I stroked her hair. Her crying transferred her worry and pain to me, and I felt the growing relief in her heart as she began to realize she wasn't alone. Soon, words were no longer necessary, and the three of us sat together, a chorus of cicadas the only sound. Tears flowed from my own eyes, and I found my mind wandering. The love and concern I will always have for my daughter were present in that moment as I absorbed the news that I would soon be a grandfather. Despite the bittersweet joy of such news, however, a stinging pain persisted deep in my shattered heart, for you only a few months prior, my mother had passed away as a result of Alzheimer's. One of the bedrocks of my life had just died, and I was still grieving her. Watching the mind of the woman who raised you, cheered you on, chastised you, and fed you vanish piece by piece is a torment I don't wish on anyone. Other than keeping her as comfortable as possible, there was nothing my brother, sister, or I could do. I felt powerless to help my mother retain even the simplest life skills, such as bathing and dressing, and eventually even swallowing. The wound in my heart from my mother's passing was still raw as I listened to my daughter's confession. I struggled to find a handle on the moment, let alone the past several months, as if any mother's death were not enough. The enemy of my soul seemed to be taunting me with the inability to shield my own daughter from the ways of the world. Once again, I felt crushed by the circumstances I never saw coming. I know it must sound self-centered, but at the time, I couldn't ignore the battle within me as questions and accusations shot through my mind. You're a terrible father. Where's your God now? Excuse me, because these are questions that we be asking ourselves. You're a pastor shepherding others, but you can't even watch out for your own daughter. You inspire and encourage so many people, but how are you going to do that now? You can protect your mother, and look at you failing to safeguard your own daughter. Did Sarita and I miss something? That's the famous question. What did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? Haven't we tried to be good parents? What should I have done differently? Everything was falling apart, far more fragile. I know I'm not alone in these caustic contemplations. When the floor beneath you opens up and swallows you into a free fall, you find yourself suddenly submerged in a flood of emotions, thoughts, and questions. In the midst of unexpected pain or inevitable loss, these thoughts assail you as you sink into the emotional quicksand of life's messy places, the muddy pits where everything you once held dear and true is questioned, dissected, and shaken to the core. Here, your safety zone and all presumed constants are revealed to be far more fragile than you had realized. This is where you wonder if you will ever be on your feet again, and if so, then how you will summon the strength to move on. This is where your faith is tested. Our faith is constantly tested, y'all. Through all the things that go on in our life. It's a life lesson or a life blessing. At least that's what I say. It's a life lesson or a life blessing. This is where your faith is tested, where it's refined and purified. But such knowledge is little comfort in the midst of the blazing wildfires of life, engulfing all you thought you knew and reducing expectations to ashes. Like a deer trying to follow a familiar wooded path in the midst of a forest fire, you begin running in circles, facing dead ends and disturbing detours, uncertain which way to go. Choking on collateral smoke, you're left weary and wasted, calloused and confused, depleted and discouraged, frightened and frozen in place. Y'all ever been like that? Well, you was just there. Everything was going on around you, but you was just there. You know, you feel like you're the calm in the middle of the storm. Everything around you is going on. And you standing there watching it all fall apart. And you doing everything you can to make everything to stay together. Part of the confusion results from the way life's greatest successes often bleed into the blur of your most painful moments. Because even in the moments of your greatest anguish, you often find unexpected blessings alongside and commingled with your losses. This was certainly my experience. Even in the moments of your greatest anguish, you often find unexpected blessings alongside and commingle with your losses. Remember that. Remember that even though you may take losses, the blessings is right there as well. Don't focus on the losses. Focus on the blessings. Even as I watched my beloved mother waste away, I marveled at the way God continued to bless my ministry, my businesses, and my platform of influence. Leaders from around the globe began inviting me to visit, speak, and preach in venues I had once dreamed about seeing. My books were becoming bestsellers, and movie producers were interested in taking Woman Thou Art Loosed to the big screen as a feature film, but I would have traded all of it for a cure to restore my mother's mind, body and spirit from the ravages of such an insidious disease. And now my daughter, excuse me, and now my daughter was pregnant at 13. Critics and haters of me and my ministry would pounce on such news like piranhas. Even as Sarah's health and well-being and the life of my grandchild growing within her remained my priority. I knew I would be foolish to ignore others' public responses to our family's private situation. The irony, of course, was that the one person I would usually have turned to for comfort, wise counsel, and encouragement was no longer with me. I would never have my mother back. I can't tell you the number of nights I cried silently, staring out the windows of my home into the darkness. I never imagined studying the window panes would become my default hobby following my mother's death. But night after night, there I was again, gazing into a dark night that reflected the one in my own soul. Sarah felt better after sharing the news with us and a few other close family members, but I still worried about her. When I wasn't staring out the windows, I was roaming the hallways of my house and peeking into her room to see if she was still with us. Every so often, there was a fear that gripped my heart and made me believe Sarah couldn't handle the shame and embarrassment the world was throwing her way. As a result, I worried she might take her life in the middle of the night and that neither Sarita nor I would know about it until the next morning. Excuse me. Forgive me for imagining such a worst case scenario, but when the unthinkable happens, suddenly the darkest fears get unleashed from the chains of reason and kennels of faith. Such was my season at that time. I felt trapped in my pain, leveled by circumstances beyond my control, powerless to protect those I love the most, unable to enjoy my life's many blessings, crushed. Seeds and weeds. With all God was doing in my life, some might say there was no way I should have felt so deflated, discouraged, doubtful, and depressed. They would remind me of Jesus's edict, "Physician, heal thyself," Luke 4:23, and require me to minister to myself with the same conviction with which I preach from the pulpit. But I am just as human as anyone else, and during the crushing blows of life, I am equally as susceptible to suffering. So even though we are ministers, pastors, teachers, even though we represent the Word of God, we still have our moments of weakness, our moments of turmoil, our moments of change. We have a lot of moments that go on in our lives that people on the outside do not see. So we handle situations in the same way that you all do, and we say the same things that you all say and have the same thoughts that you all have. This is what he's basically saying. He had so much going on around him that God was blessing him with. But at the same time, other things were going on in his life that were crushing and hurting and hurtful and damaging and, gave trauma. Things were going on. He know God. He fear God. He see God. But the flesh is weak. And even though we see God, sometimes, because our flesh is weak, we go through the same things that any other human being would go through, because we are made from flesh also. That is something that really needs to be understood when it comes to knowing your pastors, your preachers, your teachers, your advisors. It's very important to know, as a believer in Christ as well, that just because God is present does not mean that things are different for us. Things not different. We're all human, and we all have these thoughts and these feelings and these emotions, and our flesh is weak. We do our best to keep our spirits up so the spirit can keep the flesh pressed down. But it's a daily battle that's intensified for preachers, teachers, apostles, bishops, ministers, whatever title you go by, and you're speaking about the Word of God. The adversity in your life is intensified. It is. And the people from the outside looking in don't even have a clue. I pretend not to understand, because the people that speak the Word of God and give prophecy up on a pedestal that we can't be put on, because only God can be put on that pedestal and be recognized like that, and be flaw free and be sin free and have the total strength to ensure that these feelings and thoughts and emotions don't happen, regardless to what. And I know that Jesus died for our sins. I know that we have a choice. We have free will. And we can say yes or no. We're instructed to let our yeses be yes and our noes be noes. But at the same time, we are human and our flesh is weak. And there's none that can say A true Christian don't do whatever it may be. There is none that can say that, because if it's not a spoken word, a deed, it's a thought. So if you think it, you have still sinned. You can be in a situation and something happened and you say, "Oh, S." You don't speak it. You may not speak it out of your mouth, but the shock of the situation makes you say it here. Guess what? You still sin. You have still sinned. You didn't speak it. You didn't do anything to anybody, but you thought it. And it wasn't directed at nobody. It wasn't anything that could hurt anybody, but you thought it. Now let's get back to the to the book. More important, I discovered that if I have anything worth sharing from the pulpit, from the podium, from the boardroom, from movie and television screens, from the pages of the books I write, then it must be authentic to my own experience. You cannot speak on something that you have never experienced in your life. Experience is the best teacher. One of the best teachers. I cannot ask you or anyone else to believe in something that I myself haven't tested. If I cannot wrestle with the question of suffering, then I have little to tell you about the sacred. Is God okay with the coexistence of joy and utter anguish? Do we have to suffer so much loss in this life in order to mature in our faith? Why would a good father allow his children to suffer so much pain, injustice, and heartache? How can a good God allow anyone to be in a season of life where pain cohabitates with blessing, or worse, to endure a season so bleak that blessings seem obliterated? I certainly do not promise to have the answers to such weighty questions, but I have learned the value in asking them and in experiencing growth as a result of such challenging seasons. During these times, I began to understand the deeper meaning of Jesus' parable about the wheat and tares growing up together. Matthew 13, verses 24 through 30. We plant seeds of faith that produce a fruitful harvest, even as we discover weeds of destructive doubts attempting to destroy our productivity. Amazingly enough, however, what if our God is so powerful, so good, and so loving that he turns the tables on the tares and uses them to make us stronger, truer, and more dependent on him? As Joseph explained to the same brothers who had once sold him into slavery and reported him dead to their father, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50 and 20. The Apostle Paul offers a similar purposeful explanation of pain, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Romans 8 and 28. Notice that he says all things, not some things. A few things are the good things. All includes the hard, the painful, the unexpected, and the seemingly unbearable, unimaginable, and intolerable. All includes the losses that you're grieving right now, the ones you carry around inside you every day. All includes the disasters, the visions, the distractions, intruding on your peace of mind. All includes circumstances that leave you feeling powerless, vulnerable, and unsteady on your feet. In all things, God works for the good of those who love him. In all things. Perhaps you've heard these verses before. You might even be sick of hearing them. Maybe they've been recited rather glibly by well-intended friends or fellow church members in the midst of your life's greatest losses. I'm sure I've even uttered them myself at moments in hindsight, seem poorly timed or unintentionally oblivious to the pain of the soul before me. So allow me to apologize if I've ever led you to believe that the bishop, pastor, speaker, teacher, entrepreneur, movie producer, and author before you has enough faith to somehow avoid encountering the darkest places of life. In fact, it's just the opposite. I cannot tell you how many times the greatest successes of my life have partnered in tandem with painful ordeals beyond my wildest imagining. From some of my life's greatest hardships, I've discovered my most potent preaching and most meaningful messages. One can't exist without the other. If I am to reach the full potential for who God created me to be. The same is true for you. On one hand, God's purposes require you to step boldly into your future. On the other hand, since the crushing of the accomplishments of your life that you worked and toiled tirelessly to produce. It is the play between these two that compels me to have this conversation with you. Is it possible, a prerequisite even, that each person who dares embrace their future is also called to endure a season of trial and pain? What if there's more to our sufferings than what we see? What if the disquieting and dreadful places of life often move us along from one stage to the next, a catalyst for our growth unlike any other? Now, more than ever, it's crucial that we begin seeing the plans we have imagined for our lives cannot compare to God's strategy for fulfilling our divine purpose. Once accepted and acted upon, this line of thinking causes a massive shift in our perceptions, decisions, and behavior. We finally realize that we have been thinking on too small a level in contrast to a God whose end game for our destinies focuses on eternity instead of something temporary. We sprint to win the race we perceive we're running, but instead God is training us for the Master's Marathon. The Master's Marathon, y'all. Crushing becomes creation. I've noticed again and again that routes to progress and success often take detours. Never is there a straight path toward either of them. Our advancement inevitably includes out of the way breakdowns and unplanned pit stops that seemingly have nothing to do with our plans and purpose. We steadily travel down life's highway toward our future until we find ourselves taking an exit to a place that wasn't even on our map. Things just happen out of the blue that we don't even have control of. It's an unscheduled stop and perceived pause in our progress that threatens to destroy everything we have accomplished thus far. Stranded and sidelined, we begin feeling anxious, afraid, and uncertain. As if striking out into something new wasn't jarring enough, we become anxious because we didn't plan on making any stops, let alone in deserted places. But then we discover something there that compels us, inspires us, and motivates us in a new direction. Suddenly, we begin we begin blazing a new trail that leads us toward a satisfaction and fulfillment that exceeds anything we could have found using our original plan. So we plan, but God planned. And God's plan is going to be the plan that always comes through. It doesn't even matter what we plan. Like he said, we make stops along the way that we didn't even know what we're going to make. And then we find things at those stops to motivate us and enhance our creativity. Lead us in another direction that is far better than what we had planned. And it's all because we got lost along the way to where we thought we were going. Only God knew we weren't lost anymore. Yeah, we thinking we're lost, but God got us right on the right path, right on the right trail. Where are you going?
I need help with this question.
No, I want you to sit down. Let me see. Excuse me, y'all. Only God knew we were lost in the mirror, that the people of Israel wandering in the desert for 40 years before entering the promised land. You see, I'm convinced life's devastating detours often become the miraculous milestones charting a new path toward God's future for us. See, we got a future that we plan, and God have his own future that is already written for us that we do not know about. The tumultuous trying, testing, and crushing we experience, just like an olive getting pressed, in those places is necessary for our advancement. We have to always continue to move forward. Always continue to move forward. More important, it's imperative that our life's painful detours be hidden from us, lest we forfeit the entire trip toward our future because of our discomfort with being diverted. So, in other words, to keep us from sabotaging our future because we got to go through some things, God keeps us unaware and just guides us to it and through it. Y'all understand that? He got us to it and He got us through it. In the moment, these crushing places feel like they would destroy us and derail our journey from what we determine is our destination. When God say move, we must move. And we got to wait on God. We got to wait for God to give us a word on what we're supposed to do and where we're supposed to go, what we're supposed to say, and how we're supposed to handle things. We have to get that word from God. We can't just do things on our own. I know that we've gone through life, but we've done it like that. We've done it our way. But be honest with yourself. How has it worked out doing it your way without God? I'll let you ponder on that, and I'll continue to read. But these crushing, wait a minute. We question whether these suffering we're encountering will be the end of all we've accomplished and pursued thus far. We wonder where God is and why He would allow us to hurt so deeply. But these crushing places also reveal there's more to our lives than what we had planned. See, our picture is so much smaller than God's picture. God's picture is like that. His picture is really big for us, and we don't even see it. We don't even see it, and if we don't go through the things that we need to go through to get there, we will not see it. Look how they wandered around in the desert for 40 years instead of leaving and going straight into the promised land. Why? Because they was doing it their way. They was following God for His benefits, but they were still doing things their way. So they didn't make it to the promised land that fast. They force us to reset our compass on our Creator as we look. Damn it. They force us to reset our compass, the compass on our Creator. As we look for His guidance and follow His direction, the truly invaluable, marvelous, and eternal aspects of our identity and ultimate destiny are then displayed. The crushing becomes the creation of something new. Consider the way tons of rock and soil crush carbon deposits into diamonds. From the carbon's perspective, the weight of the world literally destroys you, but it also creates something new, something rare and beautiful. There's another analogy that I find even more compelling, one that permeates the Bible in both the Old and New Testaments, and that's the process of winemaking. Addressing an agrarian culture, many of the images, metaphors, and parables of Scripture focus on planting, tending, gardening, and harvesting. The journey from seed to sapling, from great to greatness, consistently remind us of the process. We have to go through the process. We have to take the good with the bad. We have to go through the problems, the adversities, the things that come upon us that we're not expecting. We must always be adaptable. That's what they call it in college now. They call it being adaptable, being able to change in an instant, being able to change, adapt to change. When changes happen, you just don't even go through a whole lot to try to avoid the change. The change has to come so that you can grow. The change has to come so that you can elevate. The change has to come so that you can stay spiritually and physically strong. You have to keep the flesh pressed down and keep the spirit up. Let the spirit man guide you. Let God guide you. We have a personal GPS inside of us that God has placed in us. And if we decide that we want to go on the path that God is going to lead us down regardless, if we just willingly accept that, our lives will be much better for us. Because we're going to go through things. We're going to go through things. But if we got God with us, He going to either go through it with us or carry us through it. But long as we got God, we will make it. As long as we can change and adapt to change and keep our focus on God, maintain our focus, our faith, and our trust, do what we need to do in the physical, in faith, as it is on earth, it is in heaven, as it is in heaven, it is on earth. We follow the guidance, follow the life of Jesus, and if we can't be Jesus, we can strive to go in that direction and be true and have the right intentions in our heart. We got to have the right intentions in our hearts. God judge our hearts. When we first step into an area where we are able to grow, is that not an analogous to us being planted like a seed to grow? Later, when we encounter a blessing in our lives, can it not be seen as fruit and fruit to be enjoyed? When our family and friends reveled in our success, is that not akin to those farmers of old relishing the harvest? So it's okay for people to appreciate you, But when your harvest doesn't go as planned, however, and our fruitful blessing is stripped from us and carelessly trampled, does that not strongly resemble the wine press, the device used to crush grapes and drain the juice for winemaking? We get pressed. I'm talking about we get pressed, and so our growth can flow. We get pressed so we can grow. Stop complaining about going through things. Take the worry away from yourself. When things happen, as silly as it may seem, even if you're in front of people, give God the glory and recognize Him first. And He'll guide you through that thing. Might guide you right on past it. Of course, all of this depends on your point of view. Yeah, how you looking at things. That's what I just said. Don't complain about what you're going through. Pray to God about what you're going through. Talk to Him about it. Don't get on the phone and call your friend and tell your friend, oh God, I'm doing this, oh God, this going on, oh God, that's going on. Forget the friend on the phone. Jesus always on the main line. Call Him right on up and tell Him what you want, and He'll give it to you. If you were a winemaker, a vintner, as they often call, you would be all too familiar with each step in the process of making wine. However, if you were the grapevine, the removal of your fruit and its destruction under the feet of those who seem not to care, it will give you a completely different perspective. Yeah, it's how you look at things. It's how you perceive things. In the midst of our painful crushing, we realize that the blessing found in the production of the fruit in our lives was never God's end goal. So God don't want to give us one thing and stop at that. Abundantly. Abundance. The master vintner knows there's something much more worthwhile beyond the production of fruit. The potency of its juice fermented into wine. To the vine, however, the fruit seems to be everything. Season after season, storm after storm, sun and rain, spring and fall. But what if you shifted your paradigm to winemaking instead of fruit growing? Instead of fruit growing, change your perspective. Look forward to the end, because the beginning has already started. The present is already here. Look towards the solution instead of contemplating, concentrating, focusing on the problem. Could it be possible that your current predicament is the wine press? Could you be going through things because God's trying to press you and make you grow and help you to be more productive and have more abundance? Because with growth comes abundance in some kind of way. It's not only monetary. Money and material things are not true abundance. Why? because it can easily pass away. You can easily lose it. It can be taken away from you. But guess what can't be taken away from you? Your perspective, your knowledge, your wisdom, your understanding, your creator. God cannot be taken from you. You can separate yourself from God, but God can't be taken from you because you belong to Him. You are His creation. And this is what we look forward to, transformation. Change your perspective, grow, transform, and grow into what God wants you to be. On one hand, God's purpose is requiring you to step boldly into your future. On the other hand, since the crushing of the accomplishments of your life that you worked towards tirelessly to produce. So it's like working hand in hand. You do your part, and God do His part. It is the play between these two that compels me to have this conversation with you. Just like my daughter, in that fateful revelation of her unplanned pregnancy, is it possible, a prerequisite even, that each person who dates embrace their future, who dares embrace their future, is also called to endure a season of trial and pain? It's the duality, the good and the bad, the trial and the pain, versus the blessings and everything else. You have the blessings on one side, you have the trials on the other side. Yes, yes, no, no. God said so. What if there is truly more to our sufferings than what we see? If you're anything like me, maybe you have discovered the disquieting and dreadful places of crushing in life move us along from one stage to the next. We may not like to admit it, but what if our crushing is necessary in order for our potential to be fulfilled? You got to go through it. You got to press on. You got to press through it. No matter our season of life, I believe it is crucial to our development that we begin seeing that the plans we have imagined for our lives do not even compare with the master's strategy. Once accepted, this line of thinking causes a massive shift in our perceptions. We finally realize that we have been thinking on too small a level in contrast to God, whose end game for our destinies resembles eternity instead of something temporary. Okay. Can you see the necessity? I went fast right there. Can you see the necessity of being crushed as part of your maturation process to fulfill God's plan. Crushing places reveal that there's more to our lives than we had planned. It seemed like I read this already. Did I? Okay, no. Crushing places reveal that there is more to our lives than we had planned. The truly invaluable, marvelous, and eternal aspects of our identity and ultimate destiny are displayed to us there. It is in the midst of painful crushing that we realize that the blessing found in the production of fruit in our lives was never the Master's end goal. Our latest crop of fruit was merely part of an ongoing greater process. Yeah, I did read this. No, I didn't. It is specifically upon the areas is similar. It is specifically upon the areas of personal crushing that I want us to focus our exploration in these pages. We don't need to linger on what the moments of crushing actually feel like, because every person destiny has or will become familiar with pain. The question that needs to be answered during our crushing is whether or not the suffering we are encountering is the end of all we have accomplished. To that inquiry, I sincerely and wholeheartedly believe the answer is an astounding no. The process of making wine takes time, and it's not just the actual process of picking the grapes, sorting out the ripe fruit from that which is not ready or has spoiled, crushing the fruit and letting it ferment into alcohol as the juice becomes wine. Even after the wine has been bottled, it may be years before it is at its peak and ready to be served. So things take time. We a lot of times in life, like right about now, everybody is in a rush. Everybody trying to hurry up and get there. They're trying to hurry up and get it done. They're in a hurry. So it's less productive things happening now in our lives. We have to slow down. And like I said, listen for the word of God. Listen for God's direction. We got to slow down because things take time. The process of life takes time. It's not going to be an instant. That's why we learn every day. There's something that we should learn every day that is different from what we already know. We learn every day. We must be open to learning. If we're open to learning, then our perceptions and our minds and hearts will open up. And that can help cause the change, the transformation within us. It can help with the change. Have you ever noticed the way fine wines may be decades old? A wine aficionado would know not only the vineyard, its geographical region and climate, and the specifics of the type of wine, Chardonnay or Merlot, for example, but they would also know the vintage and the quality of wine produced that year. From the grapes' point of view, that year in which they were picked and crushed seemed devastating at the time, but for the vintner and later the fortunate few sipping the delicious bottle of wine from the vintage, the year now seems like a blessed time, a time of transformation. So those grapes turned into wine that sat there and fermented over time. Oh, this thing say decades. Over decades or years. And then when the person tastes it, you could taste it and taste the quality in the wine. So the beginning result was the crushing. The end result was the blessing. That's what this book is about. Your transformation. Could the worst moments of your life actually become turning points of triumph for God? The master vintner, as he was your life's deepest heartaches and most devastating disappointments for your good and his glory. You know, when we go through things, we always have a testimony to tell other people when we have come through it, to inspire them and motivate them. That's part of being. That's part of being a minister, of being a Christian as well. Is sharing the goodness of God, sharing the testimonies in your life, sharing and letting people know what you have overcome and how you have overcome, to inspire and motivate them to do the same thing. You know, everybody is so in their feelings now. You can't even say things to people because instead of them looking at what you said, thinking about what you said, and letting them marinate to get a clear understanding, or even going as far as asking you, well, what did you mean by that? They take their own assumptions and run with it. And then a lot of times it's incorrect. What they're thinking is incorrect. So a lot of people are walking around upset, mad, holding grudges and all kind of ill feelings against other people, and it's just a misunderstanding of some words. People have been walking around for years angry and holding things in their heart and saying that they love God. How? When the unforgiveness is there. How? People walking around angry for nothing. Some people are, you know. It's literally nothing. It's something that can be straightened out with a phone call, or with a hey, how you doing, or something like that. And people are walking around. You know, it really needs to be a transformation of lives. Not just some of our lives. All of our lives need to be transformed. And the only way it's going to happen is if God is leading the way. If God not leading the way, it's not happening correctly. And right now, it's accountability time. Right now, it's time for all the games to stop being played. It's time for all the untrue people to get on out the way. Because God is rising up a whole another set of people to represent Him. And that's not your normal people that you would be looking or thinking it would be. It's time for the truth to be told. It's time for us as ministers and pastors and preachers and bishops. It's time for us that know the truth and seek the truth so that we can lead and give the truth. It's time for us to step up. It's time for us to step up. And it's time for us to teach people how to learn, because people have really forgotten how to learn. You see this book right here? I mean, how many people? I don't even see my children reading books anymore. You know, I don't see nobody taking notes and stuff no more. I mean, we done got away from the basics, and it's like things are dumbed down. But the transformation gonna come whether we want it or not, because God said so. And it's time. When my precious daughter, barely more than a child herself, told me she was carrying a child of her own, I thought I would die. But when I look at her now and the incredible ministry she shares with her husband, I know that she would not be what she is without the crushing she endured. When I look at the young man my grandson has become, I know that what seemed like a crushing disclosure at the time has fermented into a trophy vintage of our father's best wine. Perhaps you have already witnessed such fermentation in your own life and are grappling to understand why God would use such horrific means to produce such undeniable blessings in your life. Maybe you are facing a crisis of faith that is at this very moment as you wrestle with the bruises of your battered spirit amid the crushing blows of life. It need not even be an event of undeniable magnitude, such as divorce or layoff of work, that leaves you reeling. Sometimes the cumulative impact of our crushing leaves us drained of our ability to see the divine on display in the ruins of our restoration. Whatever gets ruined, God can and will restore. Remember Job. Everything was taken, but God gave it all back and made Job more abundant because of his faithfulness. Job said, God giveth, and God taketh away. He understood that there was something greater than the material things that he had lost. He understood that he was still supposed to have faith in God, regardless of what was happening. He understood that as long as he stayed faithful to God, God was going to remain faithful to him. You see, God made covenants with us. It's a covenant that God has made with mankind. And God will uphold that covenant. But we have to do our part and trust him regardless and in spite of. You might feel resigned to a life that's less than God's best for you because you cannot allow yourself to imagine that the best is yet to come. Even though the event itself may have been years or decades ago, the trauma of your tragedy may continue to trap you in the past moment, leaving you to focus on the broken stems and crushed fruit of your past achievements rather than the Father's process of fermentation. Regardless of where you are, we all wrestle with the unexpected impact that crushing leaves on our souls. Could there be sanctity in your suffering? Can your worst moments truly become more than shameful sequence of your past mistakes? What if you could see your life as God sees it? What if your best moments are waiting ahead? My friend, I'm convinced God can use the weight crushing your soul right now to create his choicest wine if you will let him. Crushing is not the end. The crushing is the beginning, y'all. The crushing is the beginning. Okay. Now let's see how this workbook works out here. We just finished chapter 1. Okay. Now, let me see, where's my ink pen? Okay, now let's answer some questions. Question time. Okay. When have you received news that left you reeling? I mean, whatever kind of news, whether it was, it made you be in shock a little bit. It was something that you realized, something that happened unexpectedly. Now let's explore this. How do you handle receiving it in the moment? How would you handle similar life-changing news differently today? Why? Okay, now the turning point that happened in my life was my mother's death. Okay, that sent me spinning. Why? Let's look at the why. It sent me spinning because I was her only child. It sent me spinning because it was just me and her. I had other family members, but when it boiled down to it, it was me and her, And in the last 2 years of her life, she was able to be released from drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and narcotics addiction. So for the last 2 years of her life, which were the first 2 years of my son's life, my mother was free from that, and we formed a bond that had become so strong that we were able to enjoy each other as family. We would go over to my grandmother's house. It was me, my oldest daughter, and my son. We would go over there. We would have dinner. My mother would cook. We would go over there. Thursdays were our main day. That's how it started out. Thursdays we would get together and go and buy food and sit down and have dinner together as a family. And eventually it turned into an almost everyday thing, and it was something that I had desired in my life, since I had been younger when she was going through her wilderness time. And we got close. I was able to learn some more things from her before she left here. And I didn't imagine life without her. So it sent me reeling. But I didn't grieve right then. And I don't think a lot of people that was around me really realized that. I didn't grieve right then. I went into this mode where it was, let me make sure I make Mama proud when I plan this funeral. Let me make sure that Mama look good. Let me make sure Mama got the right casket. It was like I had got this doll that I was about to play with for a week that I wasn't going to have no more after that week was over. So that's how I was doing it. And at the time, I had my own drug addiction. So that's what was happening to carry me. And I don't know whether people around me realized it. But it sent me reeling so bad that, I went through a lot of phases with the grieving. And then, after that reeling, and after she was put in the ground, the reeling went in another direction. Because then, my mind started messing with me. And I would do things like go out there to visit her at the graveyard, like I was going to see her at the house or something. Oh, Lord. People don't realize that what I really did when my mother passed. They really don't, and I haven't really talked to anybody except for a select few people to let them know exactly what my mind was and how I grieved my mother's death. It was like I was in shock, and I stayed in shock for months. Not that week, not a month later. I'm talking about months. And my mother died in July. I buried her August the 1st. The following year, I'm telling you, I reeled for months and months until November 19th. Until let me see. No, until I found out I was pregnant with Princess. I found out I was pregnant with her. It had to be like in February or March or something of '99. Mama died August of '98. I found out I was pregnant the beginning of 1999, and I had my daughter, my third child, November the 18th of 1999. That's when they really slowed down. And I was still spiraling though. Still had to go through some more things. So that's the answer to the first two questions. Now, if that had happened to me today at this point in time in my life, I would handle it a lot better because I have grown. I understand how to handle grief. I have learned how to solve problems. But the main thing is I have learned to trust in God through it all. My trust in God at this point, you know what I would have did? Because just to get things over with, according to how we're supposed to bury the dead in the Bible, the way that God instructed us to bury the dead, I wouldn't have waited for nobody to come from out of town. I wouldn't have went to no funeral home. I wouldn't have planned no funeral. I would have did a memorial service on our third day. On our second day. But I wouldn't have kept my mama out past 3 days. I'd have let them do whatever they had to do, you know. I'd have taken let her go to the funeral home. But as far as the filling her up with embalming fluid and doing all that preparation for the funeral and the casket and the vault and the obituaries, I wouldn't have did all that. I'd have got some obituaries made with my mama pictures and pictures of us on it. And I'd have had a memorial service. And she'd have been there. But she'd have been sitting out there in a big pretty vase with her picture and her name and stuff on it. And probably a picture of us going around it. You know, it'd have been something unique like that. And I'd have kept it moving. I'd have grieved my mama properly. And I would not have done the things that I did at that point in time in my life that I was doing. Right now, I would not do that. Because I'm free from drugs. I'm free from alcohol. I have better understanding. And because of God, my knowledge, wisdom, and understanding is firmer. My faith in Him is stronger. My trust in Him is stronger. My confidence, my motivation, my self-esteem, my love for myself, all of that is bigger than life at this time. So I wouldn't have a funeral like that. That's number one. Number two, I wouldn't handle myself like that. The way that I did. I would not go out and do the wrong things that I did after my mother passed. I wouldn't have never went to jail. It's just a lot that I would not have done. That I did because of what had happened at the time. Which is no excuse. All I know is right now it would be a whole different thing. It would be a whole. I would have celebrated my mother in a whole different way. I wouldn't have had no whole bunch of people sitting up in the church at no funeral. I wouldn't have done it. Where are you going?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm not going nowhere.
Oh.
Trying to fix my
Okay. Question number 2. Which of the following emotions have you felt when everything has appeared to fall apart in your life? Check all that apply. After you consider all these, circle the three that felt most powerful during this trial. Okay, so we talk about my mama's death. Okay, shock. I felt that. Okay, excuse me, y'all. Let's go back. I'm going to start question 2 again. Which of the following emotions have you felt when everything has appeared to fall apart in your life? Check all that apply. After you consider all of these, circle the three that felt most powerful during this trial. Okay, now with my mother's death, I felt shock. I did feel some fear. Yeah, I was angry, disappointed. I was a little bit confused because I wanted to know why God took my mama. I was sad. I had anxiety. I was detached because I detached from everybody. I went through a period of denial because I felt like if I went to Florida and came back, she would be here. Regret. Yep. Uncertainty. Yep. Something else. Let's see. My something else would be loneliness. What is that? This is your brother. Girl. With the hoodoo. Hold on again, y'all. Let me answer the phone for my son. Now, all of our choices are shock, fear, anger, confusion, disappointment, shame, sadness, despair, anxiety, detachment, denial, regret, uncertainty, and something else. My something else was loneliness. Now the three main ones was this loneliness, the shock, and the disappointment. And that's because I was in shock because it had happened. That's number one. I was disappointed because I was like, I wanted to know why God took my mama from me. You know, I felt like she belonged to me. Why would he take her? And then the loneliness. It's like I felt instant loneliness, like a piece of me was gone or something like that. And I don't think a lot of people around me understood that. They saw what I was putting on the outside, but nobody had tapped into the inside to see what was going on with me. Now, when your life suddenly falls apart, you may feel like free falling into space, suddenly unearthed by the constants you used to know in life that are suddenly no longer in place.
Okay. I thought you were saying we keep distracting.
When your life suddenly falls apart, you may feel like you're free falling into space. Sorry for being interrupted again. Suddenly untethered by the constants you used to know in life that are suddenly no longer in place. Your health, your life, your relationships, your finances, your career are all revealed to be much more fragile than you ever realized. No longer do you have the security, peace, and stability you once took for granted. When everything falls apart suddenly in your life, you may also feel confused by the way something so devastating can occur in the midst of a season that has otherwise been productive and successful. It may even be tempting to allow the painful pivot points to outweigh your achievements along with your ascension in other areas of your life. But life doesn't stop even though you feel like it has. Instead, you have to decide how you will handle the bittersweet blend of terror and triumph. Yeah. Okay, the question under that. Number one, how have you managed to maintain perspective during past moments of crisis in your life? Do you tend to remain calm as you slowly absorb the new reality and decide how to respond? Or have you usually reacted to in a more explosive expression of your immediate emotions? Now, with this question right here, I will say that in the past, I have been like a time bomb. I get angry. I do vindictive things. I say vindictive things. I act out. I act up. Whatever you want to call it. If somebody did something to Minister Williams went off like a time bomb. Since I have given God priority in my life, like I said before, I have learned how to solve problems. I have learned the value and how to incorporate adaptability in my life because of the constant change. And when something upsets me now, before I even open my mouth to say anything, I will go off by myself, or I will stand right there in front of you and I will process what I'm going to process right then, and I react accordingly. But it's not with anger. It's not with mean words. It's not with mean actions. It's not with vindictiveness. It's not with a whole bunch of whatever, confusion, arguing, none of that. I don't even argue with my children anymore. When they do something wrong, I literally just correct them and let them go ahead about their business. Just go on and correct do what you were supposed to do. Get it right and go on about your business, and I'll go on about mine. And guess what? I have more peace. I have more understanding. My perspective has changed on some things. Because God tells us in our anger, do not sin. Hate the sin. Love the sinner. And this is something that I'm learning right now to incorporate in my life to maintain the peace that God wants me to have. Something happened, I give it to God. I want to know how to handle something, I ask God, and I wait. Because it don't take him long to answer my question, and it don't take him long to respond to me. When I need clarity on something, I ask God. I sit back and I wait. I be still. I have moments of silence where there's no TV on, there's no radio playing, there's no phone interaction, there's none of that. But I get my Bible or one of my spiritual books and just read and listen and meditate in the quietness. When God wake you up at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, he wants some time. He wants some time with you alone. And that's how I have been able to maintain my peace. I don't engage in arguments. I'm learning how to agree to disagree. And I am adapting to what I need to adapt to make my life better. If that means stop doing something, then that means stop doing something. If that means get rid of somebody, then that means get rid of somebody. If that means changing my mind about something that I was wrong or incorrect on, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be renewed by the transformation of my mind. I'm going to change my mind when it's necessary. And you will be able to maintain your peace. Keep God first. And when I say keep God first, I mean really first in everything. And don't look for the answer that you will expect in a human or from a human understanding. Expect the answers that God give you to come through spiritual understanding. Because our thoughts are not his thoughts. And his ways are not our ways. And where we think small, God thinks big. That's why we have these detours in our life. T.D. Jakes explained it in the book. We have these detours in our life. We may not understand it. We may not understand the pressing that we get when we go through our trials and tribulations. But just like the wine in the wine presser, after that wine has been pressed and crushed and processed and all this, it's allowed to sit. And the longer it sits, the better it is. So out of all the pressing that come along with our trials and tribulations and the adversity in our lives, after the pressing and the time, the required time that God has ordained passes, the blessing is the end result. Like I said, God will bring you to and take you through. And when you feel faint and weak, God's strength will carry you on. That's a promise from our Creator. If we trust and have faith in Him. Now we're going to go on to this next question, and that'll be it. I know this is long, but I read the whole first chapter for everybody. Now we're doing the lesson to gain more understanding. And then tomorrow, I'll be back with chapter 2, and we'll do the same thing. What y'all think about that? Yeah. It's good to learn, and it's good to know about the Lord. Is it easier for you to see the big picture and maintain a long-term perspective on your life, or to see what needs to be done only in the immediate short-term present moment? How do your default tendencies help you process life's challenges? The number one thing with this whole question right here is to put God first. Number one. That's the number one thing. Number two, love yourself enough to know that regardless to what, if no one else knows who you are or what you are, God does. And if you pray to God in secret, God will reward you openly. No recognition should be sought from man. It's okay for man to recognize you. But your race should be ran with the intention of God recognizing you. Understand that God is our creator. Jesus is our king. We are part of a royal family. All the priests, all the prophets, everyone that has been called to God or to represent God are a blessing to us all. And we can learn from them how to communicate and serve God in spite of our flaws. Because I don't know if anybody has ever said this, but I know that this is one of my sayings. That God loves us in spite of. I'm going to leave you with this thought. God loves us in spite of. Man loves us because of. Get that understanding in your spirit, and you'll have a full understanding of who and what God is, and who and what you are, and the role you play in building God's kingdom. It doesn't matter if you have a title or not. We are all supposed to be ambassadors for Christ. And we are all supposed to lift up the kingdom of God. Our purpose here on this earth is to worship our Creator, have a relationship with our Creator, listen to our Creator, and let our Creator guide us. Keep the faith and trust in our Creator, regardless of what we are going through. Don't look at what happened. What happened is the past. You can't look at right now. But your main focus should be on God and where He taking you. Not where you've been, not where you're at, but where you're going. All right. Minister Williams done talked enough. She gonna let y'all go now. But I hope that you all enjoyed the first chapter. I'll be back tomorrow morning and read the second chapter, and we'll do the second lesson. And I hope that you all enjoy, because I'm going to do this with several books. I'm going to start reading again, and I encourage you all to read, because, you know, if something was to happen to our technology, that's what we're going to have to do anyway. You know, there was a lot that we did before all this technology came to be. And we need to do it, because everything and everybody seems like they're kind of dumbed down because of the technology. Our children are learning right. and stuff not going right this with this technological language and everything, it causes a lot of confusion. But I'm gonna let y'all go, cause I can talk, especially when it comes to God. I could go hours on end, and I keep talking and explaining different things that come to my mind, because we perish because we don't have enough knowledge, and we need to get our knowledge up. We get our knowledge up, a lot of stuff will go different for the world, for everybody in the world, if we gain the right knowledge and stop being followers. Everybody need to be leaders, need to lead the people that's coming up. Everybody that's in the position needs to lead, whether that's in the family, the church, whatever it is, your business, you lead. All right, I love y'all, and I'll be doing a sermon too. Yeah, I'm getting my thing to get my stuff together so I can do a sermon and present it to y'all in a different way. I'm changing up my YouTube channel, the way I'm doing it and everything. So I hope that the change, y'all will adapt to the change pretty well, all of my followers. We love y'all. God love y'all. And y'all have a good Saturday.